Hi there. So, this is module number 1, which is all about leadership. First, a little overview. What are we going to look at in this module? Well, we're going to start by thinking, what is the scope of managing and leading? How do these things different? What are they really? What do you need in order to lead well? Then we're going to think about how your position, your role that you might have in an organization, actually that is only the starting point. Then we're going to think a bit about your leadership style. Different people have different ways of leading, and it's important that we understand our own style and recognize the strengths and weaknesses that it has. Then we're going to think a bit about power and authority and our own sort of personal security that plays into all of this. And then, of course, as leaders, we are given a certain amount of power, so we have to know how to use it well. And then we're going to think a little bit about how to lead change, because that's one of the things that leaders often have to step up and really manage well, is leading through change. So, this first one, the scope of managing and leading. I want you to take a couple of minutes, and maybe you might need to pause the video to think about these two questions. What is management and what is leadership? And maybe they're different. Maybe you want to press pause and just take a few bullet points to think, what are these things and how are they different? Okay, well, one of the sort of more popular definitions for leading is about how one person might seek to intentionally influence other people in order to guide, structure, and facilitate activities and relationships within a group or an organization. And obviously that is for some kind of purpose. So, okay, if we think of that as being our sort of fundamental understanding of what leading is about, then what are the differences between leadership and management? Well, here are some of the differences that I've listed. I think that managers, they definitely have a position of authority, and they have subordinates who work usually for some sort of rewards. There's usually a transactional benefit going on there. They will work in order to receive something else. If you compare that with leaders, leaders don't necessarily have a position of authority, but they do have influence over followers who choose to work, who choose to follow them because they are inspired. And I think that is a fundamental difference between a manager and a leader. Managers have people who have to follow them. They're required because of the contract, the transaction that they have entered into. Whereas leaders, they have people who follow them because they themselves want to be changed. They want to be transformed. They want to see something changed, either in themselves or in their society or their community or whatever. Okay, moving down one row. Managers, they have to fulfill a series of tasks that have been delegated to them. They have to make decisions, and often those decisions are with some sort of short-term focus. They also tend to be quite risk averse. They want to avoid conflict. They want to get the job done. They would therefore prefer stability and order. They will tend to make rules. They will make policies. These are all good things. What I'm saying here is not that managers are somehow wrong or bad or have a wrong approach. All of these things are absolutely necessary in order to get the job done. And so, you can also see at the bottom of the list here, it says managers, they're basically reactive. They are motivated by some sort of objective. And many of us, in our jobs, in our roles, whatever that might be, in whatever organization we're in, there are going to be certain objectives. Even in the introduction to this course, we were talking about how UMN has got a vision to fulfill about fullness of life in a transformed Nepali society. That is an objective which then breaks down into a series of tasks which need to be done. And managers are those who are going to put that into action, who are going to make that happen. And they will put the structures in place in order to make it happen. Leaders, a little bit different. We've said that they tend to be influencers of other people, and people will follow them because of kind of who they are and because of the change that they see that they will bring. And so that actually requires that leaders do certain different things as well. They tend to be people who will absorb blame. They tend to be those who credit others when it goes right. They will tend to engender loyalty. People will feel loyal to them, whereas you don't necessarily have to feel loyal to a manager. Leaders are often about facilitating others and doing so that they fulfill long-term purposes. And that's a bit different from managers, because managers tend to be more short-term focused. Where managers tend to be risk-averse and they're trying to make sure the job gets done, and they'll put a structure and a framework in place to see that happen, leaders will tend to see risk. They will see challenge, they will see conflicts, they will see change, and sometimes they will go after these things. They will embrace those things because they know that in those things is where change and transformation can come. And so often leaders tend to be kind of rule breakers. Now obviously in our organizations we're going to have a combination of those managers who are more reactive and who are motivated by the objectives that are set to them, whereas leaders, they're more proactive and they tend to be motivated by vision. And of course, many of us who are in some sort of leading position, we're going to have a mixture of these things going on inside. It's nobody, almost nobody, is completely purely one or the other. That doesn't exist. It's always going to be a mixture of these things going on. But I think it is useful to acknowledge this difference and to recognize that sometimes we need to be more like the pure manager, and sometimes we need to be a little bit more like the leader, and sometimes we need to have a mixture of those things going on. So, be aware there are different things that are required of these different roles. And of course, these definitions, they have, this is kind of my understanding of these things. Actually, if you talk to different academics, to different managers, to different leaders, you are going to get a whole bunch of different ideas on what is and isn't a manager or a leader. In fact, there was one chap called Fayol, who's very famous back in 1916. He looked at the scope of managers and leaders, and he said it all boils down to these four things: planning, coordinating, monitoring, and controlling. So you plan, you make a plan, you make a plan of what you're going to do, and you say that is what we are going to do, that is what we are going to set out towards. The manager will then coordinate the resources, whether it's people, money, policies, whatever's necessary. They'll coordinate these things and pull it together to achieve that journey. But of course, you don't get to that journey all in one day. And so there's monitoring going on to say, are we on target? Are we doing what we set out to achieve? Are we heading towards our goal? And if we find that we are not getting there in the right pace, or maybe we're going off direction or something, then there is this controlling element to steer us back onto course to ensure that at the end of the day, we get where we intended to be. Now, Another chap called Mintzberg, he disagreed. Mintzberg was living around the same time, and he looked at what Fayol was doing and saying, no, I mean, that sounds good in theory, but when I actually look at my own life as a manager, that's not what I see me doing. I do all kinds of other things. And I'd like you now just to sort of think a little bit and maybe take some, write down some bullet points. You can pause the video in a moment and take some bullet points and think, what do I actually spend my time doing when I'm managing or leading? Take a few notes. Okay, well, Mintzberg's perception of this was that it was a much more complicated role with many more things involved. He described it as much more like being the conductor of an orchestra. The conductor, they have a central role. They have to ensure that everybody else is on the same page, that they are playing the same tune at the same pace, that those who are being a bit quiet need to be brought up a little bit, encouraged a little bit more. Those who are playing a little bit too loudly, they need to be, told, hey, look, calm it down. The job of the conductor is to balance the team out and to make sure that everybody starts at the right point, goes along the right journey together, and gets to the end point. And if people start dropping out partway through, you have to be able to replace those roles and so on. And Mintzberg, he said, it's far more complicated than just Fayol's 4 items. Actually, there's a whole range of stuff. Some of those things are interpersonal. There are interpersonal skills, there are informational skills, and there are decisional skills and actions being taken. So the interpersonal ones, this is all about how the person's authority can lead to status, relationships, networking. It's that kind of thing. It's about using the role as, let's say, a figurehead. Because sometimes the leader has to be the one who stands up and who talks on behalf of the organization. They are the figurehead of the organization. Sometimes they have to lead in terms of telling other people, this is the direction we are going to go in and we are going to do it. Who's with me? Which may also be a bit of inspiring as well. There's also this role of needing to liaise, often with other organizations or other groups, to make it all happen in a coordinated fashion. There's then this informational set of skills and tasks, which are about turning relationships and generating information from those relationships. So, monitoring what's going on. Well, that's going to happen because you have relationships with people. Disseminating that information. So when the leader has brought information in from wherever it might come from, they need to make sure that the right people in their organization then get to hear that information. Sometimes they also need to be a spokesperson, representing one part of their organization, or even representing one part of their beneficiaries maybe, or representing a partner and speaking their words into the organization. And then, once that solid information has come into the organization and has been put in the right places, decisions need to be made. And sometimes that role might be a little bit of the entrepreneur, thinking, okay, this is a new thing. How do we innovate this? How do we make it a success? What needs to be put in place? Sometimes the decisions are about handling disturbances, because different people have got different ideas on how this needs to be done. Sometimes the decisions are about balancing out resources. Who is going to get which resource in order that we achieve this target? And sometimes the role is just about negotiating. It's trying to help different people in the team, or maybe helping the team or the organization negotiating with another party. The role of the leader is to play that negotiating role and to help smooth things over. So, here's a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you. I'd like you to think about somebody that you recognize as being a great leader, somebody that you really respect, not just a theoretical person, Martin Luther King, great. Obama, whatever, I don't know. But no, think of somebody that you actually know, somebody that you know personally. What is it that makes them so great? Is it to do with what they do? Is it to do with how they do it? Probably it's a bit of both. Maybe you might like to pause the video and just take a few moments to think about a really great leader that you know. What is it they do and how do they do it? Okay, but now we're going to start thinking about these different roles that a leader has. There's a chap called Steve Radcliffe who wrote a book called Leadership Plain and Simple. And he broke things down and said, let's keep it really simple, people. Leadership is about three things. And the first of those is the future. Leadership is about helping people to challenge the status quo. To say, no, how things are today, that's not enough. It should be different. It needs to be different. Something has to be done about it. And so the job of the leader is to present some sort of an inspiring vision of what could be. And to say, hey, look, this situation that we have here, this could be different. Here's how I think it could look different in the future. The second role, says Radcliffe, is about engaging people. It's about infusing other people to get behind that compelling vision. So having sold the vision and saying this is what it could look like, do you want to join in? It's about getting other people to be excited and joining in with you. And of course, why are they going to do that? They have to believe in you. They have to trust the leader. They have to trust that that future, that the picture that they're painting is really worth chasing. And then they need to be empowered so that they actually have the ability to join in. And it may be that they need encouraging. It may be that they need certain skills developing. Maybe they need to grow in certain ways. Maybe they need certain authority giving to them so that they can do it. And the job of the leader is to then multiply these various talents and gifts together as a team so that a team together can really move forward on the vision that they have painted. Now, to make those steps forward, Radcliffe suggests, the leader needs to make big requests. He talks about stretching goals, stretching targets. If you just ask somebody to do what you already know that they can definitely do and they feel very confident in, great, they'll do it. But they don't necessarily grow in that role. Whereas when we make big requests and we say, I know this is going to be difficult, but I believe in you, I trust you, I think you can do this, let's do it. Then there's also a chance that the person will grow. And thirdly, is about delivery. Is the leader actually going to deliver what they've talked about? Can they coordinate these different efforts, these different people, these different resources in a positive and a productive way so that the vision and mission is fulfilled? That's a big question. Can they do it? Well, it actually falls into two different categories, because one is about what can you deliver now, in the present. If we have high expectations of what we think that our people, our team, we ourselves can do, then we can challenge poor performance. And we can say, come on, I think we can do better than this. But you can only say that kind of thing if you set fairly high expectations. And it is important that our people do actually deliver and not just think about it and talk about it. Nelson Mandela, he rather famously said that vision without action is merely a dream. And action without vision is merely passing the time. No, vision with action, that can change the world. We need to both have a sense of the future and engaging people in it and delivering it. We can't just talk about vision. We have to then see it realized in the now. What can we deliver in the now? But, said Ratcliffe, leaders need to also have another eye on the ball of what are we going to be able to deliver in the future. As well as turning out good results in the present, we also need to be developing our people, developing policies and procedures and markets and whatever else it might be, so that we can deliver more into the future. Because leadership is not just about producing more followers. No, the function of leadership is to produce more leaders. That is what leadership is about. It's about producing more leaders, people who understand future, engage, deliver. You know, that these three things become the mantra that leaders, should be totally absorbed in. Ensuring that they understand the future and that they've communicated it to other people, that they're engaging their other people, they're growing their skills, they understand what their team can and can't do, and they get their team to deliver both in the present and to grow the resources for the future. Okay, another way of looking at the roles of a leader is instead of future, engage, deliver, there's another model out there that's called action-centered leadership. And it talks about A, achieve the task, give direction, assess the risks, make the relevant decisions. You know, the leader, their job is to make sure that their task and the task of their team gets done. It's actually rather similar to something we've just been talking about. B is about building the team. The job of the leader is to coordinate the different team members. It's to build that sense of unity, that sense of purpose, and to then divide up the tasks between the different roles and to coordinate, to make sure that these different people then work well together. A, B naturally follows C. C is then about capacity building the individuals on the team. Do they each have their expectations set? Do they know what they're supposed to achieve as an individual? Have you as the leader help them to build their skills, to encourage them, to correct them when they go wrong? And so this A, B, C is another way of thinking in very simplistic terms. Am I, as the leader, am I doing my job? I'd like you to take a few minutes with a piece of paper and make some little bullet points, thinking about A, B, C, and then F, E, D. So achieving the task, building the team, capacity building the individuals, and future, engage, and deliver. Under those headings, just jot down some thoughts about how do you spend your time? How do you balance your priorities? Do you spend an awful lot of time dreaming about the future? Do you spend very little time building the capacity of your team? I don't know. You take some time, jot some notes down, and think through how do you divide up your priorities between A, B, C, F, E, D. Okay. You've now thought about how you spend your time. I'd like you to think a little bit about how your ideal boss would spend their time. The person who oversees you, who manages you, whom you are accountable to. They are the one who gives you guidance. They are the one who delegates authority to you. They are the one who decides the basic priorities of what you need to do over the course of a year or so. And I want you to think, how would you want them to divide their time between A, B, C, and then F, E, and D? How should they be dividing up their time? What would you prefer? Often when we do this in a classroom setting and we talk to the people around, of course, they would like a boss who is there helping to build their capacity, who is helping them to grow as an individual. who is giving guidance but isn't always watching quite really too closely over their shoulder. They want somebody who is setting out the vision for the future, who is engaging them and helping them to be enthusiastic about it and see where their place fits in this big picture. But that kind of boss, the kind of boss that we would like to have for ourselves, are we that kind of boss to our subordinates? Do we spend our time building them up, encouraging them, enthusing them, showing them the way, giving them a sense of what the future vision could look like? Do we engage them? Do we spend time training them, mentoring them, coaching them until they are absolutely amazing leaders in their own right? Do we spend that kind of time? Often there's a disconnect between what we would like as a boss of ourselves and how we behave as a boss to other people. Often there's a bit of a gap. And that can be, I think that should be a challenge to us. It should be something that stirs us and says, come on, actually we have to do differently, we have to do better. And I'd like to share with you how these things that we've been looking at, this future, engage, deliver, and achieving the task, building the team, and capacity building the individuals, they fit into the 8 modules of what we are going to talk about throughout the Ignite modules. You see, over these 8 different modules, all 6 of these F, E, D, A, B, C, they're all going to be hit. These are the cores of what we see good leadership looking like. Okay, another little question for you. Are leaders born or made? Is it that some people are just naturally good at leading, or is it that some people have worked hard to develop leadership skills? Well, I suspect it's probably a bit of both. When we have the question of what do you need in order to lead well? Is it about nature? Is it about nurture? Is it something that we are inherently born with, or is it something that we can nurture? Is it a skill? Is it an attitude? Is it a thing that we can grow? As I said, I think it's probably a bit of both. Certainly there are a bunch of skills that we can learn and we can grow in. And that even if we are not really strong in the nature side, maybe we don't naturally feel that we are a leader. Maybe we don't naturally look like a leader. But we can learn certain skills, certain ways of working, certain attitudes, so that we can improve our leadership skills. So what are we talking about, these skills? Well, it's not only skills, it is also attitudes. And we need to work at both. So first we're going to look at skills, then we're going to look at attitudes. Under leadership skills, some of it is technical skills. There are things that we can learn in order to process better, to make better decisions, to function well. There are a whole bunch of interpersonal skills that we can work on. There are conceptual skills of how we think and how we imagine things to be. There's what we call emotional intelligence, of how much we understand other people and we can picture what they are thinking and feeling. There is something called systems thinking. Do we see things in a longer term picture where we can see the system that is necessary to make things happen on into the future? And of course there is our own ability to learn. Are we willing and able to grow? Those are, I would argue, the most useful leadership skills. And of course there's a bunch of attitudes as well. Attitudes are much more difficult to pin down. So one of the ways that is quite easy is you can say, well, okay, think of a really lousy boss. Somebody that you did not like their attitude. Maybe they were very dominating. Maybe they were a bit power hungry. I want you to think and maybe jot a few things down. What do you think this person, this boss that you didn't like, this dominating boss, what was their attitude? How did they perceive their followers? What did they believe about their followers? What do you think motivated them? Maybe if this person was asked to present their secrets of successful leadership, what kind of thing would they be listing, I wonder? Maybe just take a couple of minutes to jot down a few ideas about their attitudes. Okay, and now I want you to compare those attitudes. You know, you earlier were thinking about a great leader, somebody who did really well, who you admired and you respected. And now you've been thinking about somebody who you really didn't respect and really had the wrong attitude and the wrong approach. I want you to compare those things in your mind. Okay. Hopefully, by comparing these two and by seeing some of the differences in skills, in attitudes, maybe this might be something that will challenge you as to, well, what skills and attitudes do you have? You know, are you the kind of leader that you want to be? Or are there things in your leadership style, in your ways of working, that actually you recognize you need to change?